Close your eyes for a second. Tonight you'll climb into a bed that knows the exact shape of your body. You'll pull a soft blanket over your shoulders, spend 30 minutes watching videos of dogs failing to catch things, make 2 pointless trips to the refrigerator, and eventually drift off into warm, quiet unconsciousness. Now imagine doing all of that and removing every single part of it. No blanket, no bed, no walls, no roof, no door between you and whatever is outside, no light of any kind. Instead, you are sitting on cold ground inside a dark forest, wrapped in animal skin, listening to something large, something heavy moving through the undergrowth 40 feet away from you, getting closer. That was Tuesday night for the people you descended from. And here is the question that almost nobody actually stops to ask. What did they do with all of it? When the sun disappeared and the world turned completely black, when predators woke up and began their rounds, when your only real tool was a sharpened piece of stone and whatever courage you had left, what was the plan? Did they sleep? Did they stay awake, rigid with fear, counting sounds in the dark? Did they have some kind of system, some routine that made the night not just survivable, but actually meaningful? Because we spend 1/3 of our entire lives unconscious. And most of us have never seriously considered how radically, completely different that experience was for 99% of human history. The answer, it turns out, is not what you would imagine. It is stranger, more sophisticated, and honestly more human than almost anything else you could learn about our past. And parts of it are still running inside your body, right now, tonight, whether you know it or not. Let's go back. Not to the organized ancient history you learned in school, the kind with pyramids and written records and named leaders, but much further. To a time before agriculture, before pottery, before any settlement larger than a group of people who trusted each other enough to sleep in the same space. Early humans faced a problem that was both brutally simple and genuinely terrifying. Half of every single day was in complete, total, uninterrupted darkness. Not the kind where streetlights bleed through your curtains and you can find the bathroom without hitting anything. Not the kind where your phone screen is enough to navigate by. The real kind. The kind where you hold your open hand directly in front of your face and see absolutely nothing. The kind where a single snapped branch 30 feet away sounds like the opening line of a very bad story about you specifically. And in that darkness, things with far better night vision than yours were actively looking for something to eat. Lions, hyenas, leopards, saber-toothed cats. Every significant predator of the ancient world is either crepuscular or nocturnal, most alert and active at dawn, at dusk, and in the deep hours of the night. The exact hours when your ancestors were also awake, also moving, and considerably less equipped for what darkness brought. There was no forecast to check. The forecast was darkness, with a strong probability of becoming a nutritious meal for something that sees better in the dark than you ever will. So, what did they do? The answer starts with a simple geometric truth. You grouped up. Not because togetherness felt nice, though it probably did, but because a group is exponentially harder to ambush successfully than a single individual. You found elevation. You searched for enclosed spaces, narrow passages, anything that forced an approaching threat to come from one predictable direction. And if you were fortunate, you found a cave. Caves were not popular because ancient people had a fondness for stone floors and zero natural ventilation. Caves were strategically optimal. A cave has one entrance. You can place your back against solid rock. You know with certainty what direction danger must come from. You can hear everything approaching before it arrives. It was the first security system. And unlike every security system that came after it, this one worked primarily on psychology. Most large predators are not interested in pressing an attack into a confined space full of alert, potentially dangerous prey. The math wasn't favorable for them either. Groups slept pressed together in these spaces close enough to share warmth. close enough that a single sharp noise would ripple through everyone simultaneously. And here is something researchers studying sleep across populations have noted about exactly this arrangement. Within any group of humans sleeping near each other, there is natural, individual variation in sleep depth. Some people are light sleepers, surfacing at small sounds. Others sleep heavily through nearly anything. That variation, which we treat today as an inconvenience, was a survival feature. A group with a full range of sleep depths had an effective early warning system built into it automatically. No assigned guard rotation. No one sacrificing their rest deliberately. Just the simple mathematics of enough people sleeping near each other that the lightest sleeper always catches what the deepest sleeper entirely misses. And then, roughly 400,000 years ago, the entire experience of the night changed. Fire, not fire used opportunistically, the way early hominids had occasionally benefited from flames ignited by lightning strikes. Controlled fire. Reliable fire. Fire that could be intentionally produced, carefully maintained, and carried from one night to the next. The practical benefits are obvious. Warmth. Cooking, which unlocks dramatically better nutrition from the same food sources and light that pushes the darkness back. But the most important thing fire did was something far less obvious than any of those things. Most large predators evolved specifically to hunt in darkness. A controlled fire is, from their perspective, a complete disruption and anomaly in the pattern that their instincts were built around. Most of them will not cross into the circle of firelight. Not because fire physically prevents them. Because light at the center of the night breaks something in the ancient hunting logic they inherited. The ring of firelight was the first fence humanity ever built. It worked entirely on psychological pressure, cost nothing to maintain, and was more effective against predation than almost any physical barrier could have been. But beyond protection, fire did something to human beings that changed what human beings fundamentally were. Fire created a gathering place. Think carefully about what happens when you sit around a fire at night. You cannot scroll. You cannot multitask. You cannot be efficiently productive in any of the ways our entire civilization is now structured around. What you can do, what you are essentially forced to do, is look at the faces of the people across from you. Talk, listen, be completely present with whoever is sharing the warmth with you. Researchers who study living hunter-gatherer communities groups like the Jew Hwansi of the Kalahari Desert and the Hadza of northern Tanzania have documented something remarkable about how these communities use language across the day. Daytime conversation is almost entirely practical. Who is hunting where? What was found? What needs doing before sundown? The ancient equivalent of operational briefing. Nighttime conversation is something completely different. At night, around the fire, people tell stories. Long, carefully constructed, emotionally layered stories. Stories about ancestors and how the world came to be the way it is. Stories about what courage looks like, what generosity costs, what it means to be a person worth remembering after you are gone. Stories with characters and conflict and consequences that feel real. Approximately 80% of all nighttime campfire conversation in hunter-gatherer societies is storytelling. During the day, that figure drops to roughly 6%. Read that carefully. 8 out of every 10 conversations happening around a prehistoric fire, every single night, for tens of thousands of years, were stories. Your ancestors sat in circles of light every evening and narrated the world to each other. They were doing, in the most ancient form possible, exactly what streaming platforms do now. Exactly what novels do. Exactly what every film ever made tries to do. They were using story to make sense of existence, to process experience, to transmit something essential from one generation to the next. The campfire was the cinema. The storyteller was the screen. And what was being broadcast was not simply entertainment. It was the complete cultural memory of the group, the values, the history, the identity that no single person could hold alone, and every person needed to carry forward. Without writing, without any external storage at all, the story told tonight was how children learned who their people were, how wisdom outlived the person who first discovered it, how a group's way of understanding the world survived past any individual lifetime. Stories around the fire were the hard drive of human civilization, before writing existed to be that hard drive. Fire may have been the single most important catalyst for the development of language itself, for the growth of empathy, for the construction of cultural memory, for the human capacity to imagine things that do not yet exist and work toward them anyway. Not a bad legacy for a pile of burning sticks. Now, sleep. Because this is the part that might genuinely change how you feel the next time you find yourself awake at 3 in the morning. Almost everyone carries the same assumption about sleep, an assumption so fundamental that questioning it feels strange, healthy, normal sleep is 8 continuous hours in a single unbroken block. If you wake in the night and stay awake, something has gone wrong. You spiral. You catastrophize. By 4 in the morning, you have self-diagnosed conditions you cannot pronounce correctly. Here is what history actually records. A historian named Roger Eckerk spent several decades working methodically through thousands of historical documents, private diaries, court records, medical texts from multiple centuries, household accounts, literature written across vastly different cultures and time periods. What he found is documented with extraordinary consistency. For most of human history, people did not sleep in one continuous block. They slept in 2, first sleep and second sleep. You went to bed a few hours after dark. You slept for approximately 3 to 4 hours. You woke up naturally, not anxiously, not in distress, but calmly and with unusual mental clarity, and you stayed awake for 1 to 2 hours. Then you returned to sleep until morning. This is not a fringe theory or a speculative reconstruction. It is documented across cultures that had no contact with each other. It appears in ancient texts going back to Homer. Roman writers mention it as unremarkably as we might mention breakfast. Medieval European literature is saturated with references to it. A French physician in the 16th century recommended the waking interval between sleeps as the ideal time for couples to conceive children, noting the reliable relaxation and alertness that window produced. Household accounts from across medieval Europe record tasks completed between the 2 sleeps as completely ordinary events: prayers, fire tending, brief neighbor visits, nursing infants, reflecting on the day's dreams. That phrase you've encountered in old texts, the watch in the night. We assume it refers to soldiers on walls, maintaining military vigilance. Sometimes it does, but very often it simply refers to the natural waking interval. Ordinary people, awake in the dark, in the middle of the night, doing small ordinary things in hours we now sleep through entirely. What ended this pattern? Artificial light. Gas lamps, then electric lights, made it possible to remain meaningfully active well into the late evening. Bedtime shifted progressively later. Total sleep time compressed into a single extended block. The natural gap between first and second sleep was absorbed into a longer period of unconsciousness. And suddenly, waking in the middle of the night felt like something was broken, rather than something working exactly as intended. If you have ever woken at 3 in the morning feeling inexplicably clear-headed and calm, laying quietly in the dark for an hour with your thoughts moving freely, and then drifted peacefully back to sleep, you were not experiencing insomnia. You were expressing a biological rhythm so ancient it predates everything we consider civilization by a very large margin. Your body remembered something it was never supposed to forget. Let's go further still. Because what early humans were doing with the physical setup of sleep is more impressive than the simplified version we tend to imagine. Archaeological evidence from Border Cave in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa, indicates that as far back as 200,000 years ago, humans were constructing deliberate sleeping surfaces. Not furniture in any recognizable modern sense, but carefully assembled layers of selected plant materials, grasses, leaves, specific vegetation chosen and arranged with intention. And beneath those layers, researchers found ash. Not ash that drifted there accidentally from nearby fires. Ash placed deliberately, as a layer, underneath the sleeping surface. Because ash repels insects. Ticks, mites, flees the creatures that move into warm, sleeping bodies and make them itchy and miserable, and sometimes transmit serious disease while doing so. Someone 200,000 years ago woke up itching, looked at the ash from the fire, made a connection, tested it, confirmed it worked, and passed that knowledge to the people sleeping nearest them. That is the scientific method. Running inside a prehistoric brain, applied to the problem of sleeping more comfortably. These were not people passively enduring existence and waiting for morning. These were people actively engineering their rest, solving problems with the materials available to them, improving quality of life through systematic observation and iteration. In colder climates, Ice Age Europe, Central Asia during the harshest winters, the challenge shifted from insects to cold. Temperatures in glacial Europe could reach levels that would kill an unprotected person within hours of exposure. The response was communal sleeping. Bodies pressed as close together as possible, sharing heat in an enclosed space, functioning collectively as biological insulation, not sentient thermal physics applied directly to survival. And now, the part that tends to expand people's sense of who these ancestors actually were. For virtually every ancient human culture on Earth, night was not simply the pause between productive days. Night was the most spiritually charged, cosmologically significant time in the entire cycle of existence. This makes intuitive sense when you consider what the night meant to people watching it without the context of modern science. The sun, the source of warmth, visibility, and everything that makes life possible, died every single evening. In the understanding of countless ancient peoples, it literally descended into an underworld and had to fight its way back through darkness to return. Every sunrise was a victory. Every night was a vigil in the truest sense. The ancient Maya built their ceremonial cities Chichen Itza, Uxmal, Palenque, with precise architectural alignments to specific star positions and planetary movements visible only at night. The observatory at Chichen Itza tracked Venus with extraordinary precision across seasons and years. Venus, only visible at dawn and dusk, was associated with Quetzalcoatl and directly governed decisions about when to go to war. The night sky was not decoration. It was a strategic intelligence system operated by specialists whose entire professional purpose was reading it accurately. In ancient Mesopotamia, the civilizations of Sumer, Babylon, and Assyria, a specialized class of scholar priests called the Baru, dedicated their entire professional lives to reading celestial phenomena for meaningful information. A comet indicated something specific. A lunar eclipse had direct implications for the king. Planetary alignments told you when to plant crops, when to negotiate treaties, when to commit armies to battle. The methodology was incorrect by modern standards. The underlying instinct to find reliable patterns in natural phenomena and use them to make better decisions was the same instinct that eventually became modern science. The Polynesian navigators accomplished something that becomes increasingly difficult to believe the more carefully you examine it. Without instruments of any kind, no compass, no charts, no reference tools of any description, they navigated the largest ocean on Earth in wooden outrigger canoes, finding tiny islands scattered across an expanse larger than all the world's land combined. They did this almost entirely at night. They had memorized the rising and setting positions of hundreds of individual stars for different seasons and latitudes. They read ocean swells by feel. Different ground swells arrive from different directions, and an experienced navigator can sense their origin through the hull of a canoe moving in darkness. They tracked birds, which fly toward land in the evening. They read cloud formations that tend to collect over islands. They felt water temperature changes with their hands. The night sky was their navigation system, their chart. And in certain respects, it was more sophisticated than anything humans carried before satellite technology. These were people who had turned darkness into expertise, who had made the night into a library they could read fluently in the dark, on open ocean, thousands of miles from anything familiar. Iron Age metalworkers in what is now Zimbabwe, working across roughly 17 centuries, deliberately chose to operate their forges after dark. Not by tradition, not arbitrarily, because daylight washes out the subtle color changes in heated metal that tell a skilled smith exactly what temperature they are working with. Red heat, orange heat, yellow, white each stage communicates something precise about the metal's condition and what it can be shaped into at that moment. At night, those colors read with complete precision against surrounding darkness. These craftspeople were using darkness itself as a precision optical instrument. In Mohenjo-Daro, one of the earliest true urban civilizations, over 4,000 years old sanitation workers collected the city's waste specifically during the night hours. They had coordination systems. They had scheduling. They had, functionally, organized night shifts. In Bronze Age Oman, farmers irrigated crops at night to reduce evaporation, loss, an intelligent water conservation strategy derived through pure observational reasoning. In cold northern Europe, Vikings used whale fat and fish oil lamps to maintain light through winter nights that lasted 18 to 20 hours. They did not surrender to the darkness. They industrialized their light sources and continued living through it. So let's bring everything together. Because there is a real conclusion here, not simply a collection of interesting historical details. When we picture what ancient humans did at night, we tend to imagine something small and frightened. People pressed against rock walls, eyes wide in darkness, waiting passively for morning. The night is absence, the meaningless gap between the days when real life actually happened. That picture is exactly backwards. The night was when humans gathered in firelight and told the stories that built every culture that has ever existed. When they slept in two natural phases and spent the quiet interval between them thinking, connecting, tending what mattered. When they held each other warm against temperatures that would otherwise have been fatal. When specialists read the movements of stars for information that guided entire civilizations. When navigators crossed the largest ocean on Earth using nothing but sky and water and accumulated knowledge. When metalworkers used darkness to see more accurately than daylight permitted. The night was not empty. The night was full. A different world with different rhythms, requiring different skills, offering different kinds of meaning. And human beings mapped it, mastered it, and made it entirely their own across hundreds of thousands of years of continuous effort and adaptation. We exchanged most of that relationship with darkness for electric light, which was, to be completely clear, an excellent trade. Modern medicine, clean water, global communication, refrigeration, the advantages are real and enormous. But something genuine was lost in how completely we erased the distinction between day and night, in how thoroughly we defeated the dark, in how little most of us now understand about the sky directly above us, or the natural patterns of our own bodies when left to operate without artificial interruption. The campfire circle. The shared stories in the dark. The two-phase sleep with its strange, clear-headed middle hours. The stars as map, as calendar, as sacred text. The waking in the deep middle of the night with nothing required except to exist. So the next time you wake at 3 a.m, inexplicably alert, calm, thoughts moving cleanly through your mind like water finding its level, don't spiral. Don't reach for your phone. Don't begin the self-diagnosis. Just lie there for a while. In the dark. Let your thoughts move wherever they need to go. Be awake exactly the way they were awake. Quietly, completely, in the middle of a night that has always been yours. If this changed something in how you think about darkness, if something here landed the way it was meant, to share it with someone who might need to hear it tonight. And if you're new here, welcome to Stickly History. We do this a lot. You are not malfunctioning, you are remembering.